Hi, welcome back to Cambridge Inside Out. I'm Judy Nathans.
And I'm Robert Winters.
Yeah, we'll continue our romp through the
civic landscape.
Oh, I like that. Romp through the civic
Here
landscape.
we go.
Okay. So what else besides it's hard to park?
Besides a park, well, there are a few things that are creeping back in. Again, just to sort of drift back to our lovely city council for a moment. Mm-hmm. One item which I've sort of been wondering for a while, whatever became of that, was there was a zoning petition a few years ago to regulate outdoor lighting.
Oh, right.
And then it went, and I remember testifying at planning board hearings.
And didn't it go to the ordinance committee?
What happened was the zoning petition pretty much got deep sixed.
Okay.
But the thing is the planning board recommended it, and this is
right.
exactly what I said in my testimony. It says this is ridiculous to have this be a zoning law. Because
right.
First off, it would only apply to new construction, whereas a municipal ordinance would just be universal. Mm-hmm. So I thought, well, that's the right, if you're going to do it, and I actually think it's not a bad idea to regulate some lighting.
Right.
All the examples that were given in the early going of this
Which are the big buildings that had these rooftop lighting?
No. Oh. That's what's really interesting about it, is that initially all of the rhetoric about outdoor lighting, when it was the Teague petition, was all about, Mrs. McGillicuddy's getting light burning into her bedroom.
From where?
And she's been sick, and you can't, and it's just killing her. The usual.
But where was
nonsense.
it coming from? A big building,
it
or
could have
just
been from a neighbor that had a bright
one of those
security
spotlights.
light,
You're right.
or it could have been from a parking area across the street,
sure,
or a
that's
commercial establishment
all right.
that was lit excessively.
Right.
I mean, some of you may remember back before. Do we still have any used car lots anywhere in Cambridge?
Gosh, I don't know.
I remember used to pass them, like if you're going on Prospect Street going into Union Square.
Oh, well, that's because they're all the junction.
So they would have these absurdly bright lights, and they'd have those little triangular flags flapping in the breeze.
Yeah.
Right? They're all gone now.
True.
Right? But, there were a lot of types of businesses where they would sort of have this sort of garish lighting.
But even at night, they left them, well, especially
sometimes
if
they would, and they would be bare light bulbs.
Right.
I don't know why that was sort of the thing, but it was like bare light bulbs.
That's all they had,
Yeah. So anyway, there was, I think, the nucleus of a good idea, which was that maybe there ought to be some rules about outdoor lighting.
And there wasn't anything in the books anywhere about lighting?
There may have been something,
but very extensive.
Not particularly, and not that I'm particularly aware of. I mean, they regulate like signage, so if you had big, brightly lit signs or something, there are certain limitations on those.
All right, so then that got established by...
Right, so then Chris Basler, with the economic development people in the city, they were chairing and meeting all this outdoor lighting task force that met for
So it was a task force, they didn't hire a consultant? They didn't pay money for a consultant?
They had consultants brought in along the road, and again, I hope I'm getting this right.
Go again, all right.
But I think basically what happened is that they started getting more and more technical, and they were trying to quantify, if it's this many lumens and candle power, and it was this type of lighting.
Kind of like the noise ordinance, only for lighting.
And they say, well, you can't have, let's just be ridiculous. You can't have anything brighter than a 40-watt light bulb. Well, okay, but what if no, I'm just kidding.
Right.
But what if you put 1,000 40-watt light bulbs next to each other? Then you might be legal, but you're still ridiculous, right? So there were reasons why you had to be a little technical about how do you phrase the whole regulation of lighting. Anyway, in my view, it got clogged up and loaded down by its own details to the point where some people said, I don't even know how to read this anymore. And then, in my view, pardon me if I overstep here.
All right.
Other issues that had nothing to do with lights shining into Mrs. McGillicuddy's bedroom. But things like the Zinc building down at East Cambridge, where there was this garish, what they call architectural lighting on the top of the building.
That was on all night, or was it just on till...
I mean, it was basically shining a light saying, look at me, I'm a new building.
Yeah.
And, it never bothered me particularly, but I can understand why, if you were nearby, it might bother you, right? So maybe some rules would be in order.
Yeah.
But then that became sort of the centerpiece of all the rhetoric for a while.
Which was unfortunate because it didn't cover all of the situations.
Right. So then you had this piece of proposed legislation which was already getting complicated and sinking under its own weight. And then you say, well, let's glom all this other stuff on top too. Oh, and while we're at it, let's have some more controversy about building signage too. So, and then eventually it just said, oh boy, this is ridiculous. And it just sort of went to bed. And it's been sort of sitting there.
It's kind of like the Municipal Broadband Task Force too, the same thing. I mean, they did all the study and then it just sort of sat.
But at least with the broadband situation, you could say, well,
this is what it's going to cost, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, if there's 180 some odd million buck price tag, I don't know that the manager's warmed up to that. So let's slow down.
Well, yeah.
So you got to make and by the way, there are some people are making a better case for that. I would say, there was somebody at the meeting. Was it last night? I think.
Yeah, I'm going to go to this.
That there's
it's tomorrow
very
night.
Nice flyer actually. Better Internet for All, public internet option, ACLU.
It's presented by Upgrade. I mean, they're the ones that are.
Yeah, so this is May 16th. That's
tomorrow night at
7 to 8:30 Stata Center at MIT.
That weirdly architectural center.
Yeah, the Geary building. That I look out when I'm teaching my class. I look right at that building.
So but you're right. So that's
tired of the Comcast monopoly. Okay. Yeah, we're all a little tired of the Comcast monopoly. Is this the right solution? I don't know.
I'll report on it. I'm going to go to that.
Yeah, I'm very interested in it.
You're going to go too?
I don't know that I can, but but it's possible.
Anyway, so let's get all right. So other thing, so the lighting. So they did the task force. And there was a report, wasn't there? I remember going.
There was a report, and they came up with some recommendations, and then nobody acted on it because, in my view, it was.
So it never went to ordinance committee. It never went. It never got established as a.
I think it got an airing.
It got a hearing, but it never got decided as it. It never got enforced.
No, and there were too many people said, "Well, I ain't voting for it with that in there, and I'm not doing this."
So it just sort of what got filed?
Yeah, well, no, it didn't get filed. It's sort of in limbo. So there was an order at the council meeting that basically says, "Well,
what's going on?
There's on a waiting report. We asked for this, and then here's another one. We asked for that.
Right.
So when are we gonna get it?
Yeah.
And so I think they're saying, well, we're not going to wait any longer. And honestly, they shouldn't, because this was something people talked about.
This was, again, that was submitted by Vice Mayor Devereaux and Councilor Carlone.
Right. Okay. So my feeling about this, and this actually is a statement I would make about all the items on the waiting report, which is, blank or get off the pot, right?
Yeah. Wait, was that an awaiting report item, or is that just a?
Yeah, it's a waiting report as well. All right. So the thing is that if the council is sort of percolating something and saying we want to do it, then either A, they should force the issue, make it happen, or back off and say another day.
Yeah.
And the manager, should say. I actually was talking to a couple of city councilors last week after the meeting, and I said, the manager should start basically doing the 10-word or less response, saying, not yet, not now. Thank you, Louis V. Pasquale.
Right, instead of waiting and then finally.
And if you're really hot to trot about this in 6 months, put another council order in, but we are not moving on it right now, so stop waiting for the report.
Right.
And just that would be a little more honest.
Yep.
And I just would rather live in a city where we're being a little more honest about things. So don't just let things sit and wait. Just do it or don't do it. But and take the heat if I mean, there are some people who would get if you said, well, we're going to just torpedo the outdoor municipal lighting proposed ordinance because it's just a bad idea. Well, then there'll be some activists who'll say, you're an bunch of evil people, right? Well, take the heat. Tell them, well, they're wrong. I'm sorry. But that's the way it is, right?
Well, this order they want an updated schedule for resubmitting a revised draft.
Because it's basically been sitting in limbo at Community Development Department.
So it needs to be
Now, by the way, in all fairness,
at
least in my opinion, one of the reasons it went into limbo is because Chris Basler left the city's employ and moved to Delaware.
Oh,
and he was the person who was riding herd on that. And maybe it's just that the football wasn't handed off to the next player.
Good point.
And maybe that's part of the reason, I mean, don't go looking for conspiracies when it could be something as simple as,
I don't think anyone's looking for conspiracies. They just want action, that's all. I mean.
Yeah, and listen, I'll be the first to admit that there was a nucleus of a good idea there, and I would love to see.
Yeah, I thought there was a lot of good ideas
but we had, in the last city council, we had a group of people in there who said, you're going to give us the moon or nothing, and
what was that about?
It's just a mindset people get into. I think we'd all be better served if our elected officials just say, well, I'll tell you what, we'll give you this now. We think this is pretty good. Right? Kind of like when people said, well, we want such a thing for Central Square, and then the Barrett petition came in, or actually the Central Square Restoration petition came in and said, I'll tell you what, let's not go for the whole ball of wax. For now, let's just let people build up a little bit here, pad out the density, exempt the ground floor retail, and we'll worry about Part 2 another day, right? And then that passed, I think, close to unanimously, maybe even unanimously. So I think there's some wisdom in sort of toning it down a little bit and being a little more incremental.
Yeah, well, incremental is definitely
You know,
my word.
And honestly, I wouldn't.
Incrementalist. Is that a right word?
I wouldn't mind if the city came down and says, okay, you've got a light on the back of your house which is unshielded, and maybe we'll give you 5 years. This is actually in the proposed ordinance. We'll give you 5 years or a couple of years to do something so it's less offensive to your neighbors.
Well,
Right.
I mean, Quentin Zondervan brought up a point. I guess he lives near a building that's lit all night.
That's another issue.
And I agree with that. There's a lot of buildings that, look, Fenway Park is lit all night sometimes.
Yeah.
And I don't get that. So to me, it's just a waste of energy
But then
as
again,
well as,
Fenway Park's also been there for a while. So if you move there, you kind of know what you're buying into.
No, but
right?
I don't see why you have to have lights at night.
No, I agree with that.
You know.
There's some reasons why we wouldn't
I'm
do it.
thinking more of energy use. I don't care
Right.
how many newfangled bulbs they have, it's still energy. Isn't
Yeah,
it?
but honestly, if it's
What?
the light that offends you, don't use an argument about conservation of energy to say that, just if you don't
But I
like the
think
light, say turn off the light.
Right, but I think it's both.
Well, I
It's
mean,
both.
I'm not discounting the fact that
Yeah.
light uses energy. But
Also, you can't see stars. I can barely
by
see
the way,
now.
there
you know?
is this weird paradox, which is that the more lighting becomes energy efficient, the more people says, well, hey, I'm not wasting any energy. It's only 13 watts
Yeah,
instead of
well,
100.
still.
So let's burn bright.
But then we
right?
can't see the stars.
I know.
Dark sky.
That's another matter. Too.
All right. So where did it? So they gave till
basically-
June 11th. Was this filed? Was this passed on? What happened to it? Do you
So
remember?
I think they just waved it
It's
through.
not going to a committee or anything. It's going to the city.
No, there's
manager.
nothing tacked on.
So when
Basically,
it's
it's
filed,
saying-
it means it goes to the.
They're saying, Mr. Manager, come
Okay.
back with a report. Just
Okay.
bring it back, and then
All right.
we'll send it to ordinance or wherever else,
Yep.
and come up with something.
Okay.
But let's get off the pot.
Okay. You know what? Another interesting came up. It came up because of Clinton Street, but the whole thing about
Oh my gosh.
But the whole I've heard that in other places. There's I think in Lynn or something that they actually changed the street signs that said you could not enter between certain hours.
There are
because
places.
So why couldn't they do that here instead of speed bumps and all that, which affects fire engines?
Well,
Is that another state thing
all right,
you have to get?
at the risk of offending everybody on Clinton Street.
You've been offending people this whole show. I mean, not offending, but I'm just saying.
Honestly, when a group of people, even if everybody on the street signed a petition and said,
Which
give us
apparently
very
they
special
did.
treatment.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the thing is, look, it's sort of like mom and apple pie. You sort of say, hey, could you sign this petition that says you like mom and apple pie?
Yeah.
People are going to sign a petition. You say, I'd like a quieter street. Who's not going to sign that, right? So I don't know that really means anything.
Okay.
The problem is that if people in Clinton Street can make the case that in fact they should block traffic or put in speed bumps or whatever, tell me of how many streets couldn't make the same case.
Many.
Right?
Right.
So what are you going to do? You're going to just do it for every
know.
street, or don't do it. Honestly, we've already reduced the speed limit from 30 to 25, and
Which
even
still is
20
fast.
in some places.
Yeah.
And maybe there would be some call. I think Dennis Carlone even suggested last night. Maybe there's some call for asking for an even greater reduction in some places.
Well,
But-
that's true. A lower
or better
speed
enforcement.
limit, but then again, as I think Jan Devereux brought up, it's all about enforcement. I mean, you can
Well,
make all the rules you want, but if there's nobody there to
But-
see the person doing it, then
At the risk of offending even more,
Oh.
you could always put up a security camera on there, and that
Ooh, a
basically
CC
and that tracks
Oh.
or a radar that tracks how fast you were zipping down the
That's
street.
interesting. Do we have those in
Oh,
certain streets?
quick, call the ACLU.
Oh, well, no, Craig Kelly wouldn't like that. He must know where every camera is in the city, doesn't he?
Oh, I don't know about
Well,
that.
that's his committee, public surveillance.
Maybe.
Okay, Craig, I'm putting this out there. Is there another survey of where our cameras are? Because I'd like to know.
Well, so would those who are
Oh,
speeding.
that's true. Or
So, like,
maybe the
where's the
police
speed
don't
traps?
want you to know where
Maybe-
those cameras
I
are.
kind of would agree with him on that.
Well, but you know what? if you're speeding, you're not going to look for the camera, are you?
You know, somebody's liable to create an app that will look and find them
There
all.
probably is an app
There
already.
may be.
I
you
think
know,
MIT was talking about that.
Really to basically show you how
No,
it breaks
there was
the law?
something about camera, because I know it came up around the surveillance and that
Yeah.
they were doing some stuff. I don't know.
By the way, every single day I see cars and
Oh.
trucks routinely violating the supposed 25-mile-per-hour speed limit.
Which is still fast.
Yeah.
I mean, I think 20 is adequate. I know.
I
With
think-
all the bikes and stuff on
I
the
think
road,
it
I'm
depends
sorry.
on
it's
street
just-
width. You know, there's some streets
Yeah, well,
like
especially if there's parking on both sides and it's
I
two
live-
ways.
I
don't
live on
forget that.
Broadway, and as far as I'm concerned,
That's two
a
ways.
25 mile per hour, because it's wide, good visibility. It's a 25 mile per hour speed limit is about right, right?
Except there's very few lights on. Well, that's.
I think there's very few lights by design, and by the
Yeah.
way, a new one is coming to Ellery Street soon.
Oh, now why was that?
So there were a lot of people
It's near the
sort
school.
of griping for it.
Okay.
But then the other thing is, there's just been a significant number of accidents out there.
Oh, wait a minute. Are you talking about? No,
Right
no,
at
no.
the corner of the park at Ellery and Broadway.
That's Ellery right there?
Yeah.
Oh, right where the library and the high school?
Where the Swiss building is.
Oh, I want a light there.
There you go.
Because I'm
Great
telling
minds.
you, you can't turn there because it's crazy.
I
This
know.
traffic is-
All right. Listen, I have to be
Alright.
sold on the idea
And
because
people crossing there, it's hard.
well, you know, the one potential downside I had about that is that
Alright.
if you put in a light
Yeah.
at a street, then normally when you're coming up to Broadway and Ellery, you have to stop. You put in a light, then people will see the green light and they'll go, "Oh boy, it's green light, go!" And
Well,
they
you know
race
what?
down Ellery.
But there's another light right after that. That's the other thing. There
another
is.
long block
So
away.
why couldn't
yeah.
they have done a yellow or something, like a blinking light?
I don't know. I don't
All right,
know.
so I didn't realize that. That's
Anyway,
pretty close to the
it's
other
coming.
light, right at the
My
pizza place.
my point here is that certain streets carry primarily motor vehicle, just cars and bikes and whatever. Some carry more trucks than others.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes those trucks are from out of state, so maybe they're not as sort of with it as far as the speed limit.
What do you think of four-way stops? Like they changed the Pearl Street and
I would
Putnam Avenue, not
They
Pearl Street,
actually-
Brookline Street and Putnam Avenue now is a
Down in
four-way
Cambridge
stop.
Port, they removed
Yeah.
traffic lights and put
Yeah.
in four-way stops. I actually
Yeah.
think that's an improvement.
Okay,
However, if the traffic volumes get too great, it's just a nightmare.
actually it's worked out pretty well. I
I
mean,
think
at
it's
first
because
I
the
was
traffic
stopping
volumes
just
are
because
not
I thought
great.
there was a light, but
But if you look at Ellery
people are
Broadway around rush hour,
yeah.
the traffic volumes actually maybe
Yeah,
make
so
the
that
case
would need
for
a
having
light versus a four-way stop.
Right, which is what it's had. It's just been a two-way stop.
It's just been a two-way.
And that's been in
Four
in
ways,
our-
at least everybody has to pay attention. Actually, it's not a four-way because it's a one-way coming
Yeah,
up.
at my corner,
Brookline.
Fayette,
Is that a three-way?
Fayette, Lee,
Yeah.
and Broadway, they used
Yeah.
to just be stop signs, and then they put in lights. You know, I actually called the city councilor, and then we got lights
Where?
at Broadway, where it meets Lee, which becomes Fayette.
Oh, yeah.
And
yeah.
sometimes I think that's great, and sometimes I think it's not so great.
Hmm.
When I think it's not so great is in the summertime, when somebody with a really loud music system is booming away in their car,
And they're sitting
and then
there.
they pull up to the light, and then you hear boom, boom,
Well,
boom.
That's
And
the
I said,
noise
please,
ordinance.
light change.
Yeah. Well,
Well, nobody wants to enforce those sorts of things.
No.
I wish they would.
people just need to be more considerate of other people, but I can't tell
There ought to
you
be a
here.
law requiring
Well,
people to be considerate.
I
What do
won't
you
even
think?
tell you what. Anyway, that'll be after the show. I'll
You
tell
know-
you what somebody yelled at
Well-
someone on Harvard Square, and it was disgusting.
You know, there are some who feel that you cure all problems with laws, and there
True.
are others feel and regulations and lights and cameras and whatever, and then others you feel you correct things by convincing people. And I think the world
Persuade, yeah.
goes around a little better when you use a little bit of both.
You have to have both.
Yeah, but
Because you have to have economic incentive, which is some way
Yeah.
rulers are going to charge you more if you do this. And then
Yeah,
people
so
start thinking
changing the
about it.
culture is not always
Yeah.
best done by changing
No.
a law to enforce a change in
No.
culture.
No.
You know, it's I'm feeling a little too philosophical, perhaps.
All right.
It's
okay.
my birthday. I can do
That's
that.
true.
Don't you
You
think?
can do that.
There you go.
So what else happened? Let's
Um,
see. Trees.
Oh, yeah, you know, I've been finding this sort of funny how, you know, if
What?
it was a year, every year or every couple of years, there's like the big issue, right? And I don't know, listen, I love trees. Don't we all
Yeah.
love trees and apple
Yeah, I
pie
like
and
open
little
space,
kids and
yeah.
kittens. I like kittens too.
I hate
You
kittens.
know, I even like little bunny rabbits. But, you know, it's funny how trees are becoming the big thing. And I did I say I love trees?
Yeah.
I love trees. But now it's becoming like, especially I see it up in Alewife area, when people using trees as this sort of,
Symbol of,
it's the wedge.
our world has,
Right.
right.
My gosh, I don't want them to build development there because some trees might get cut. Right.
Yeah.
It's become sort of the snail darter, which was, back in the days they were stopping development on, was it the west side of Manhattan because there was some endangered snail or something.
No, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah. So now it's trees. It's like the fellow who shall remain nameless, the inevitable gentleman down by Magazine Beach, with his geese.
Yeah.
Right. So the geese, we gotta save the geese.
There's thousands of them now.
My understanding is that that's largely because he was trying to block, that corridor being turned into a transportation corridor, which would lead to
they all hated
increased
BU
development.
building their boathouse, all that stuff. But meanwhile,
So you embrace the geese. So now we're embracing the trees, and again, I like the trees.
No, I mean, there's got to be an advocate. There's always been advocates for trees. We have an arborist. We have a city arborist.
And listen, and for totally legitimate climate change reasons, I think having a better, healthier tree canopy is a pretty good thing, right? But it's also what we would call, it's like from a political point of view, it's like shooting fish in a barrel. Mm-hmm. Like how many people are going to come out and report, clamoring and says, we hate those trees, damn it.
Yeah.
Get rid of them trees. No, everybody's going to agree with you that you love the trees.
Well, it's interesting. There's the Cambridgeport the Cambridgeport Neighborhood Association is now, it's being helmed by Rebecca Bowie.
Yeah,
which is great. So they're having their meeting on Thursday night, and I saw a flyer, and Jan Devereaux is going to be speaking, and Steve Nutter from Green Cambridge. They're speaking about our trees.
Yeah.
And then Craig Kelly's speaking about, not trees, something.
Listen,
then I'm at public surveillance. I don't know.
Did I say how much I love trees?
Yeah.
All
so
right,
anyway, if you're interested in that, and you live in Cambridgeport, I might stop in.
But it does make me. It brings me back to sort of like. What door did you walk into the room from? And, so there are people, for example, out in Alewife, who, from a few years ago, they were just down on the traffic on the Parkway.
Well, who isn't? Oh, come on.
Nobody loves hideous traffic.
I am glad I don't live there.
So they were wanting to block any kind of new building in the Alewife area. And that's just, and they were very outspoken about it, right? And I said, so that's where you're coming from. Okay, so a few years down the road, now, oh boy, we're going to be heat resilient. No, what do they call it? They filed a zoning petition about resiliency.
Well, have you seen what's happened down in Alewife? You see those tall buildings? I feel like we're in China, Russia down there. I mean, they're really tall, and there's one way in.
Oh, listen, I think that it's...
Because we can't control who builds there.
I think building a multi-thousand person cul-de-sac is a ridiculous concept in itself.
How did it happen?
Oh, Cambridge Park Drive terminates that way.
But who owned that land that it could happen like that?
Multiple owners, really.
Okay, so we had no control over that. There's no zoning.
No, there's zoning, and every time somebody came in and said, we'd like to replace this shaggy old warehouse with some housing.
I wasn't following things as closely, so I don't know if there was a lot of feedback then.
Most of what was getting built, and there was new housing.
Most of it's rental too. It's not condos. I think it's rentals.
But I think there are some mistakes that are being made in terms of flow through. But then again, if I say you should basically build a bridge to allow cars, then I would be speaking the devil's word in Cambridge.
I don't know. At this point, I think any bridge, and if it had a car in it, I don't think people would care. But there's got to be some way to get from
I don't think people would care, but I think people in the community development department would care.
They don't want something with cars?
Well, vehicle trip reduction.
The vehicles are already there. They're already there. Those vehicles are there, and they're clogging up that one road. They need to get out another way.
Stop talking sense, Judy. Stop talking sense. You're being practical.
All right.
That's not permitted. This is the city of Cambridge.
All right.
So, anyway, so they pass zoning laws, and it's all about trees and canopy and flood. But honestly, when these same folks walked in the door, it was all about stopping the construction, and I think it's still about stopping the construction. So let's just be honest about it. So,
not totally,
but to whatever degree we're talking about, let's enhance trees and give people incentive to have more trees, and I think that's wonderful. But if you're just using it as kind of a substitute for your real intentions, then be a little more upfront. So
Well, I don't know, Counselor Kelly signed on to this, and well, this is about a tree canopy study, and that he's not necessarily against all that
I think
stuff.
we're all for tree canopy.
Yeah.
You know, but
That's
the thing
fine.
is,
What is LDAR's data? Do you know what that means? Based on the LI,
all right,
capital D.
so I think
data?
Quentin explained that a little bit.
Oh,
So
okay.
periodically, every couple of years, I think they just did it recently. Actually, they do like a
Yeah,
flyover
he said
of the
there
city.
was a 2018.
Now, you
Yeah.
remember these new Landsat imagery was like, you'd see these wonderful pictures in National Geographic
Yeah.
where they would sort of show extraordinary detail of the landscape. And they would have like, different colors showing where there's vegetated growth and where there isn't. So
Okay.
I think it's kind of like that, only
Oh.
better.
All right.
So the thing is that when they have that data is collected and then the city could process the data and they could come up with a running estimate of whether the tree canopy is getting better or worse or whatever. By the way, and I may have the timing off here, but let's not forget, it was what, a year and a half ago, we had this horrible drought. And
Oh my
trees were
gosh.
just dying off.
And they were
like
asking people,
mad.
please water the new trees. which I
Yeah,
did,
yeah. So the
You're
thing
right,
is
we
that
did.
some of the reduction in trees in last year or so, a couple of years, and again, I don't know what data we're looking at here.
Yeah.
When people say there's been a multi-percentage, several percent
They gave some
decrease in
percentage.
canopy-
I don't know what.
Yeah,
was
so
it
if it's
7%
4% or
or-
7%,
I
depending
don't
on
know.
what you look at.
Yeah.
Does that include the drought times?
Yeah.
Where that wasn't.
And I
because
do
somebody
see
was
new
cutting
trees
down.
being built everywhere, or being planted,
Yeah,
not built.
yeah.
But as someone who's very tree prone
Yeah.
said to me, it takes a long time to grow. But at least they're replacing them.
Sure.
This was along
Anyway, so
Charles River.
but trees are the big thing now. Don't forget it.
Well, trees and bikes.
Trees and bikes, yeah. Anyway,
Parking.
let's not
We gotta
on.
go.
Let's not touch that third rail
there-
either. Okay.
Right, and there is this council meeting next week? Yes?
Yeah. So
Okay.
see you next week on Cambridge
All right.
Inside Out.
Good night.